Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about creating an eco column. This video will be a guide on how we're going to build them, the materials we need, and what we're going to be using the eco column for. For this project we've chosen a two-stage eco column, one that has a terrestrial zone in the top and one that has an aquatic and decomposing zone in the lower portion of the eco column in the bottom chamber. So we're going to talk about the things we need first. Looking at the materials that we need, we will be using some weed fabric that you see here on the left. We will also be using two 2-liter bottles. We'll need some potting soil or soil that we can obtain and get our hands on, and we'll need some drainage rock or pebbles and things like that. We'll also need a bit of string. The tools we'll be using will be a meter stick. We'll also need some scissors, and we will use some duct tape as well to secure our eco column together. The very first thing we'll do with our materials, we're going to take our 2-liter bottles and we're going to make sure they're well rinsed. We don't want any soda or any of the other materials that were inside them left, because they might change the way the plants grow. And we're going to want to remove the labels so we can see what's going on inside the two stages of our eco column. Once we have the bottles prepped, we're going to begin working on the bottom section of the eco column. So as you'll note from this picture, we're going to take one of the bottles and we're going to cut it somewhere between 15 to 20 centimeters. It's really not that exact. Don't worry about what your exact measurement is. It does help if you'll make some marks around the bottle in that whatever the length is that you choose, so that you can keep a straighter cut as you're preparing the bottle. As it says at the bottom of the slide, be very careful while you're cutting it. I don't want you to start that, as I've mentioned before, until I make the first cut, and then you can prepare it at that point and finish it up. Once we've got the first bottle ready, we're going to go ahead and move on to the second one. As you'll see from this picture, we've made some marks around the bottle at about 20 centimeters or so, and we're cutting it just the same way that we prepared the first bottle. And just as we did the first one, be very careful when you're cutting the bottle. I'll make the initial cut and then you can finish it out from there. Once we have the two bottles cut and ready to start creating the eco column, the very first thing we'll do, we'll use the bottom section, the one that has the bottom of the bottle, and we'll place a handful or so of rock in the bottom. That's going to give us a nice drainage area, and it's also going to provide some mass so that our eco column is very stable when we set it in the windowsill or have to carry it outside to get more sun and that sort of thing. Once we have the rock in the bottom section, we're going to add a cup or so of soil. We don't need a great deal in there. We just want a nice layer in with the rock so that we can get some good nutrients in that area as well. And we'll have a nice base for our decomposers to start growing. Next we'll cut the string. This is going to be our wick for the eco column. It's going to pull the moisture up from the lower part of the column like a straw and help keep the roots that are developing in the terrestrial section in the top, help keep them damp until they get well established and can reach down and start to grow into the bottom part of the column. Now we'll move on and start to prepare our weed fabric. In this case we're using some weed fabric that helps prevent weeds in flower beds, that sort of thing. We've used other materials such as coffee filters, and they work equally as well. In this case we're using weed fabric because we want it to be easy to transplant our plants once they've grown too large for the eco column and we need to move them to larger pots or to the outdoor garden. So you're going to take a piece of fabric, probably about 25 to 30 centimeters per side. And you're going to cut that out, and then you're going to cut a small hole in the center, or punch a small hole in the center very carefully, and that's going to be where we run our string through to provide a wick to move down into the bottom part of the column. Once the string is prepared, we'll go ahead and run it through the fabric. Probably equal lengths on each side is a good place to start. We may have to adjust it once we get the column together, but that'll be a good way to get it moving. Next, we'll take our weed fabric and string and we'll place it in the upper section of the column. And as you can see, we've removed the cap so that we can do that. And we've got about an equal length of the string above and below our upper section of the column. Alright, now we're on to putting the column together. And it's really starting to take form now. It's starting to look like it's going to end up. What we've done here is we've placed the two sections together. You can see where they set. The cap end of the upper part goes down into the other column. And we've got plenty of our string left in the bottom and plenty in the top. And it's okay for that to coil up down there. It's just going to stay moist and pull that water up like a straw like we talked about earlier. And then we'll work on fixing the upper section when we move to the next step. Now we'll go on and move to the part where we start to prepare the upper terrestrial section. As you can see here, we've spread the fabric out and we place a handful of rock in the bottom part there. And that's just so that we can provide a nice drainage area here for the root structure for the plants that will start to develop in the upper section of the eco-column. The wick string should just be coiled up and left above the rock, and that's going to give a nice moisture source for the roots of the plants as they start to grow. 1 or 2 cups of soil will be added on top of the rock, making sure to keep your fabric spread against the outside of the bottle. And then we're going to press it down or compact it with our fingers so that we can get a nice firm base for our soil so that we can prepare it to plant our seeds. Next, we'll take a small section of duct tape and we'll use it to connect the two sections of the column together so that we can move it around as we need to perhaps get it into one of the different windowsills or to take it outside at times if we need more sunlight. In this stage, we'll move on and we'll add a cup or 2 of water so that we get a nice moist layer of soil in the upper section. And a lot of that water is then going to travel down through the opening from the bottle, and we'll also get a layer of water built up here in the bottom section. Don't add too much. You want just enough so that the upper soil is moist and we get a little bit of a reservoir or a layer of water built in here that just about covers the soil and rock in the bottom. Alright, well now we're going to plan out how we're going to plant our seeds. As you can see from the sketch here, we know that we have a circular area. We're going to divide that into 4 sections, and we're going to then plant our seeds in the middle of each of those 4 quadrants or those 4 areas. We're going to be using 4 types of seeds. 2 that are fairly large, as you can see here, and some really tiny ones. For the tiny ones, I want you to put 2 or 3 in the hole that we start to plant the seeds in, so that we'll actually have 4 different types and 4 quadrants or 4 areas there in our eco column. Alright, now that you've got your seeds, we're going to move on to the planting process. So you're going to use a craft stick or your marker, the end of a marker, to create 4 small holes in those areas that we planned out. You don't want to make them too deep. At the most, they should be about 1 centimeter deep, just the tip of the marker or the tip of the craft stick. Then you're going to place the seeds in, as you see in the right-hand picture here, in those 4 holes. And the 2 that aren't the larger seeds, of course, use 2 or 3 of the smaller mystery seeds. We're not going to find out what these plants are until they germinate. We're going to start making predictions about what we think they are based on the things that we can infer. Alright, it's time to cover our seeds up. We're going to use our craft stick or marker and just very, very lightly use some of the soil to cover up those areas where those seeds were planted. You don't want to place too much material over them because it may make it difficult for them to sprout or to germinate. Okay, and now we're ready to move on and create our mini greenhouse. You're going to take a piece of plastic wrap or a plastic bag, as we see in our example here, and you're going to cover the top of your eco column. This is going to help us hold the moisture in and give us sort of a warmth area so that we can set these in the windowsill and get a good start on sprouting or germinating our seeds. As you can see in this picture, at some point we're going to have to remove that plastic wrap because our seeds are going to sprout in most cases, and we're going to start working on our observations as soon as they sprout. Some of the things we're going to be predicting before then, though, are how long we think it's going to take for our seeds to germinate or sprout. We're also going to start predicting or thinking about the types of plants that our seeds will produce. Obviously, we'll get more information as we start to see them develop, and we're going to want to think about whether or not they're dicot or monocot, just as we've discussed, and a lot of other things that we can observe, and we'll be keeping log sheets on those. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how our plants develop, and I can't wait to see how your eco columns turn out.